There is lots to discuss. Let's bring in our guests. Joining us from London, Marcus Papadopoulos is a historian, analyst and author specializing in Russia and the former Soviet Union. From Kyiv, we have Peter Zalmayev. He is the director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative. From Brussels, Peter Kleppe is editor-in-chief of the Brussels Report. And from Moscow, we have Viktor Olevich. He is the lead expert at the Center for Actual Politics, a Moscow-based think tank. Okay, let me go to Marcus in London and get his opinion on this. Marcus, as we're hearing, this conflict could take a very serious turn for the worse. Victor telling us that there could be a possibility of the use of tactical nuclear weapons in this conflict. Where do you see it going? I mean, what do you see happening, especially now that we've seen these territories vote for joining the Russian Union? I mean, reducing the size of Ukraine considerably.
I do not believe that Russia will use nuclear weapons in the Ukrainian conflict. The Russian army since the 24th of February has held the initiative in Ukraine. There was no Ukrainian counteroffensive in Kherson. What we saw in Kherson were Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian army hurled recklessly at Russian fortifications, which resulted in huge losses in Ukrainian manpower and armor. Now, in Kharkov, there was a successful Ukrainian counteroffensive, but the Russian army carried out a tactical retreat. A tactical retreat is not the same as a retreat. And the reason why the Russians carried out a tactical retreat was because of a shortage of manpower. And as I said at the time, and I say now, that is a problem that Russia can remedy very quickly and very effectively through partial mobilization. Now, turning to the referendums, anyone who is well versed in Russian history will tell you what I'm about to say now, namely that in Ukraine, there is a substantial percentage of the population who identify with Russia in cultural and spiritual terms. Conversely, in the westernmost part of Ukraine, principally Lvov, Ternopil and Ivano-Frankivsk, and to a lesser extent Volyn and Rivne, there the populations are largely hostile to Russia. But as a result of the river of deceit on a biblical scale emanating from the mouths of Western mainstream journalists, what I have said just now is deemed by them to be Russian propaganda, when it is nothing of the sort. The problem is that Western mainstream journalists are firstly not journalists, and they are not experts on Russia or Ukraine. If I was to ask a Western mainstream journalist right here, right now, to tell me the significance of 1654, the Treaty of Pereyaslav and Bogdan Khmelnytsky, they would not have the faintest idea as to what I am talking about.
Okay, Peter Zalmayev, I want to get to another development that we have seen today, Wednesday. Military representatives from 40 countries met in Brussels, and they met to discuss ramping up production of weapons for Ukraine in anticipation of what they say will be a war that's going to last years. According to the New York Times, the meeting was held under the auspices of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, which is the group which was not formed in Ukraine or by Ukraine, but was formed by the United States Defense Department here in Washington, D.C. It was created shortly after February 24th. Is Ukraine okay with this? Is Ukraine going to go along with this? Are Ukrainians going to go along with this? The fact that, yeah, we have the members of 40 countries deciding that this war is going to last for years.
Well, these are the countries that have decided that Ukraine's victory is not only possible, but it's a must if the world, is to defend its world order, which is basically that a country, just because it has nuclear weapons, cannot, through its whim, through its will, just unilaterally change another country's borders. That's the lesson that's been applied elsewhere. That's a lesson that was applied when it came to Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait. And yes, I have questions about America's, let's say, adventures or misadventures in the world, its involvements in the Middle East, etc. But America has never, in recent memory, tried to annex another country. Neither has any other European country tried to do that since World War II. So that's a major principle that's at stake. And contrary to what the previous speaker said and the one before, Ukraine has shown that it has the fighting spirit that's enough, that is sufficient to defeat the Russian army that is reportedly demoralized, increasingly demoralized. Folks, go on New York Times page and check out for yourself reports by Russian soldiers starting with the Battle of Kiev and what they say about their military leadership. What the previous speaker said about a tactical retreat, come on, leaving 300 pieces of artillery, heavy artillery, tanks, hundreds of tanks behind, that's a tactical retreat?
Yeah.
Come on. And mobilization, if it's so easy to do and it's such a useful thing, why didn't Russia do it before?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you why, because it does not have the wherewithal to equip its army. And not many Russians want to go and die in Ukraine.
Right. Peter Zalmayev, the reason I asked that question is because there is a widespread view, and I'm sure you are aware of this, that this is not a war between Ukraine and Russia. It's a war between NATO and Russia. It's a proxy war. You would have heard of that, and that it's being fought on Ukrainian soil, and Ukrainians are paying for this.
That's Kremlin's line. You just repeated what the Kremlin has said. You know why? Because the Kremlin cannot acknowledge it's fighting with Ukraine, because it makes Putin look like a sour loser. Like what? Ukraine? We're losing to Ukraine? No, it's NATO they're fighting against. It's a pathetic attempt to cover up for Russia's essential inability to win wars, real wars, not wars like Syria or Chechnya, where it can just go in and terrorize civilian population. This is a real war. And Russia does not have the second largest army in the world anymore. It's been exposed to the entire world and ridiculed.
All right, Peter, I'm going to go very quickly to Marcus. Marcus, I've only got about 40 seconds. What is your view on what you've just heard?
What I have just heard is both regrettable and lamentable. For someone to cite the New York Times as an independent and authoritative outlet is preposterous nonsense. American mainstream media, like British mainstream media, is neither free nor independent. And in regard to accounts of Russian soldiers, well, the New York Times, like the Guardian or the Telegraph in Britain, never actually identifies who the sources are who spoke to these Russian soldiers.
Okay, Marcus, I have to go. Well, thanks to all of you for being with us. We need to leave it there. We have run out of time. I'm Arnold Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.